Good evening, Winthrop, and welcome to the Winthrop Town Council meeting of January 19th, 2021. This meeting is being held remotely. It's being shown live on WCAT, and it will be rebroadcast throughout the week. The number to join us in public comment or for public hearing is 1-301-715-8592. Once you call, the webinar ID number is 861-817-1259. Okay, I will give them again just before the public hearings. I would now ask for a roll call so we can call the meeting to order.
Council Ruggiero.
Here.
Council Flockhart.
Here.
Council DeMarco.
Here.
Council Lettieri. Council Honan.
Here.
Council Conti.
Present.
Council Farino.
Here.
Vice President Christopher.
Here.
Council President Boncory.
Here.
Thank you.
There being a quorum, I will now call the meeting to order. And would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Councilor Christopher, would you please, Vice President Christopher, would you please lead us in it?
Of course. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the republic for which it
which stands
one
one nation
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Would you please remain standing? Moment of silence. Unfortunately, between our last meeting and today, we lost two outstanding members of the Winthrop community. One of the gentlemen donated 70 years of his life to the town of Winthrop, being a former selectman, a member of the planning board, and his accomplishments were so great in the town that the town actually named the Public Works building after him, and he passed away this past week. And that is Richard Dick Dimes, as most people know him. And please say a prayer for him. As well, this morning, unfortunately, we buried a police officer who gave 50 years of service to this town. He was a very good friend and quite a gentleman, and he had an outstanding 50 years of service with the Police Department. Since he was called back and did so many details at Dunkin' Donuts, I think you all know him or have seen him and waved to him at Dunkin' Donuts, and that is Robert McFarland. And please say a prayer as well for Bob. A moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, could we please have a motion to approve the minutes of January 5th meeting, 2021?
Motion.
All right, motion's been made to approve the minutes. It's circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Are there any amendments to the minutes? Are there any additions or subtractions? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say a yes when your name is called.
Council Ruggiero.
Yes.
Council Flockhart.
Yes.
Council DeMarco.
Yes.
Council Lettieri.
Yes.
Council Honan.
Yes.
Council Conti.
Yes.
Council Farino.
Yes.
Vice President Christopher.
Yes.
President Boncory.
Yes. Minutes are approved. And now we're on to general information. And on general information, I have allowed Councilor Honan to make a personal statement. The council has not, in the 15 years that I've been on the council, I've made any political statements or got involved in any political actions that were taking place or have taken place. However, each counselor has a right and freedom of speech. So I am allowing Councilor Honan to give a personal statement under general information. Councilor Honan.
Thank you, President Boncory. Good evening, Winthrop. What I'm about to read is a joint statement on behalf of myself, Councilor Christopher, and Councilor Ruggiero. As elected municipal officials in the town of Winthrop, we think it is important to address recent events in our nation's capital. We want to commit to the people of Winthrop that we take the situation very seriously, and we want to assure you, as municipal leaders, that we will carry on our duties without fail and always try to do our best for our town and our country. As you're all aware, there was a violent attack on our Capitol building on January 6th that included the desecration of the inside and outside of the building, looting and ransacking of offices, looting and ransacking of House and Senate chambers, and the deaths of 5 people, including the murder of a Capitol policeman. We would like to condemn what is now clearly understood to be an armed insurrection seeking to prevent the peaceful transfer of power from the outgoing president to the president-elect. Make no mistake, this attack was against the United States of America and its people. It has now been learned that this mob not only intended to prevent the certification of electoral college votes, but also to cause grievous bodily harm to elected members of Congress and the Vice President of the United States. The attack was the result of a sitting president and his congressional enablers seeking to overturn legitimate election results in order to maintain power. As verified by the Attorney General, Republican secretaries of state, and more than 60 court cases, there was no evidence of widespread fraud in the 2020 presidential election. Please know that as members of your municipal government, we state unequivocally that we believe in our election results. This year in particular, we saw in our small town of Winthrop the tremendous effort, planning, logistics, and dedication that went into making our election process proceed smoothly, lawfully, and safely. We would like to thank those members of the town clerk's office, the countless numbers of election volunteers, and the public safety officers that made this year's election, indeed every Winthrop election, free and fair as our Constitution intended. While we must move forward as a nation, there must also be consequences. For such a violent and seditious act towards our United States, we must not allow this act to go unpunished. Calling this anything other than what it is, and what our Joint Chiefs of Staff are now calling a seditious insurrection, and refusing to prosecute to the greatest extent of our laws, would only serve to embolden those who attacked our Capitol, as well as those who incited it. To impede any election in any way, be it by voter suppression, voter intimidation, gerrymandering, perpetuation of false narratives, or attempting to throw out lawfully cast votes by American voters, all tactics which have long been demonstrated to have happened throughout certain parts of this nation, is plainly un-American. In closing, we would again like to thank those members of Winthrop's town government, election volunteers, public safety officers, and most importantly, you, the voters, for ensuring that our democracy remains of the people, for the people, and by the people. Thank you, President Boncory.
Thank you, Councilor Honan. I guess I have to thank Councilor Christopher and Councilor Ruggiero as well. I didn't know that it was going to be a 3-person statement, but thank you for your statement. We now have a presentation by Massachusetts Planning Council and WIN 2030 Vision Report. Carlos, are you ready to give that report, or do you want an introduction from Town Manager Austin Faison?
I'll give a quick intro. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, MAPC, and thank you to the advisory committee in town that worked on this. One of my initial presentations that I did in Winthrop was talking about doing like a longer term vision document. And the reason why that's important is when we do the budget, it's a year-to-year thing. Sometimes we're talking about capital, so we're talking about 5 years out, but we very rarely stop to think about what the community is going to be like in 10 years. And it was very important to me so that me and my job, the council and their jobs as well, have an idea of the place that the community would like to be in 10 years. And that's what the purpose of a visioning process is. They had community meetings over the past year, which again, you know, it's been crazy. They had to have them remotely over Zoom. It was not the fun, put sticky notes up on whiteboards and having a bunch of people in the room trying to come up with things democratically. It was a little different, but the work still got done. And we're left with a really interesting report that Carlos is going to walk us through. And ultimately what it's going to do is we can take this We have a planning director that's going to be coming on February 1st. They'll be able to take this document and it will help them work towards something that our planning board actually asked for last night. And that was an updated zoning map. And one thing with the updated zoning map that I think is really important, because they wanted to come up with the townwide zoning, we should be looking at a townwide master plan. And that is somewhat the next step that you do after a visioning document. So I'm very excited to have Carlos here. He has worked very hard on behalf of the town on this project. And spent a lot of time talking to me and others in town. And we have some interesting information. And then again, we'll take it from here, from the MAPC, and we'll start running with it towards a bigger project longer term, to start kind of figuring out how to make these ideas happen. And it will also influence a budget message and some of the priorities in my budget as well. So Carlos, thank you.
Thank you. Carlos, you're on.
All right, thank you, Austin, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to attempt to share my screen now. Let's see. Can you hear that? Is my screen being shared?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. Can you see, is it one slide? All right, good evening, Council.
Just so you know, it's not filling out the width.
Oh, okay. Okay, what about now?
Yep, you're good.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. All right, good evening, Council President and Town Councilors. Thank you for this opportunity to present the final draft of the WIN 2030 Vision Plan Report. This brief presentation will cover the WIN 2030 Vision Plan purpose, the community process and input, and highlights of the vision statement, plan goals, and recommendations. In early 2020, the town contracted with the MAPC Regional Planning Agency to lead the process to obtain community input. I am Carlos Montañez, Principal Planner and Project Manager for the WIN 2030 Vision Plan process. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the work of the MAPC team members on the slide who helped with the workshop and plan content and helped facilitate meetings. Throughout the process, we work with the town manager, Austin Faison, in order to convene the WIN 2030 Vision Plan's advisory committee members for discussions and input. I would also like to thank the WIN 2030 committee members for their time and ideas on community outreach, the survey and workshop content in order to engage other community participants. Lastly, many thanks to community residents and stakeholders who attended a virtual workshop or filled out a survey. Their input helped us to determine the extent of community support for various ideas. MAPC is the regional planning agency for Greater Boston. We function as a public consultancy, and we strive to help communities in order to supplement local community planning capacity, perform analyses, brainstorm ideas, and try to find common solutions to issues that cross municipal boundaries. Crafting a vision statement and a plan can help communities such as Winthrop imagine how to influence the town's future by purposefully eliciting and synthesizing community input and thoughtfully coalescing that input into community source goals. These higher level goals can help set the tone for future actions. The vision statement and the plan goals can be included in marketing materials for highlighting the town's assets, and that also that the town is welcome to outside investors. Community input can help also frame future discussions on decisions and actions such as zoning, investments, and physical improvements moving forward. The WIN 2030 Vision Plan process included committee meetings, 2 online surveys, and 2 public online workshops. The 2 online Zoom public presentations and discussions were carefully paired with informational content and online community surveys for extended opportunities for community input. The committee provided input with designing the flyers and help posting them throughout town. We also placed 2 paid Facebook advertisements in order to ensure screen time on people's mobile phones and home computers. We had approximately 4 dozen workshop participants and 765 survey respondents. The WIN 2030 vision plan includes 1 vision statement and covers 8 general vision topics. Ultimately, after having sifted through the community input we obtained, we were able to identify 29 overlapping high consensus community goals and a total of 16 multi-pronged recommendations. The vision statement is the town's marketing one-pager or headline to existing and prospective residents and businesses. It concisely summarizes the town's assets and character and is aspirational in nature in order to help frame future discussions and decisions. An executive summary map highlights some of the high-level goals or actions that are area-specific within the town. The language in the vision statement is directly anchored by community source input from the polls and workshops. That community input was carefully analyzed through various iterations to distill the community consensus goals that appear in that statement. The statement begins with a brief overview of town character and assets before the bulk of it ties together the priority high-level consensus goals. Among them are aspirations for future redevelopment opportunities and housing options, flood resiliency for the town, increasing customer foot traffic, traffic calming, park protection, and expanded educational opportunities. The WIN 2030 vision plan builds upon 14 recent pertinent studies, such as the town's open space plan, various town center redevelopment and zoning studies, environmental analyses, and economic and water transportation studies. Some of the key higher level findings from them include the following. The population has declined by 14% over the long term between 1970 and 2010. Year 2019 American Community Survey estimates indicate a potential 6% increase since 2010. While the overall population has been declining, it has also been aging, with a long-term rise in its median age from 33 to 44 between 1960 and 2010. Almost a fifth of the town's residents are age 65 and over. Economically, prior to the pandemic, the town's business community had already been operating within a challenging environment, with a loss of 42% of local jobs between 1990 and 2017. Together with a low local jobs per resident ratio of 0.2 versus other comparable waterfront communities, Winthrop has a low daytime population of potential customers to be able to support local businesses. Another key economic development finding indicated that the town generates approximately 7% of its tax revenue from commercial properties, which is lower than the 6 other comparison waterfront communities. The same study highlighted that there are many underutilized commercial properties that could be more economically productive. Several other studies emphasized the importance of multimodal transportation options and expanded mass transit service, not only for residents' use and benefit, but also as an economic development strategy to bring more workers and visitors into town to support local businesses. In terms of housing, 44% of Winthrop's households are cost burdened, meaning that they spend 30% or more a month on housing costs, which makes it a challenge to meet other household needs. Half of these cost burdened households are occupied by older residents. Currently, The town's subsidized housing inventory is at 7.7%, which is under the state's minimum 10% requirement. Demonstrating steady progress toward approving housing units can afford the town local control over citing multifamily redevelopment proposals. The goals in the vision plan are grounded in community input. The 75-page appendix in the WIN 2030 Vision Plan report provides concise and detailed summaries of the 2 community polls and workshop discussions. A concise synthesis of both polls summarizing high priority and moderate consensus goals is in the body of the report. Many of the goals also appear in the vision statement and on that executive summary map. The key overall strategic approach towards the strategies and recommendations broadly focuses on housing affordability and increasing opportunities to allow for needed housing development, as well as commercial needs and environmental concerns. In order to address many of the community source consensus goals within Winthrop's compact area, strategic and creative solutions to maximizing the redevelopment and use of limited and key underutilized opportunity sites will be necessary. The recommended strategies, actions, and resources highlighted in the report are geared toward accomplishing this through mixed use, multiple purpose, vertical infill redevelopment paired together with multimodal transportation, flexible solutions, and an eye toward ensuring that redevelopments enhance the streetscape with amenities for walkability and leisure. There are a total of 16 multi-pronged overlapping priority strategies. The following are 3 examples. The first is the redevelopment of key opportunity sites to maximize their benefit to the community to accomplish multiple goals on sites that are currently not being fully utilized to their maximum potential for community benefit. Through vertical infill redevelopment of key properties that are predominantly covered with parking, the upper and the lower stories can house different uses that can also fulfill various community needs, generate revenue for the town, and complement the public realm and streetscape. The second highlighted strategy relates to transportation options to address various community and economic development needs. Through existing service improvements to MBTA buses 712 and 713, as well as the town's ferry, and potential new services such as circulating shuttle vans or trolleys connecting various parts of town, the town can reduce the competition for parking in its business districts and encourage visitors to visit, to spend, and support local businesses. The strategy also includes several state assistance and funding sources to help with transportation solutions, such as improving the first and the last mile connections between the nearby MBTA Blue Line stations and the town. Lastly, a third highlighted strategy brings attention to possibly developing a town housing production plan. An HPP, or housing production plan, can help Winthrop address housing affordability for both market rate units as well as income restricted units. This can help seniors, downsizers, and millennials in town with more options other than single family homes. An additional benefit of having a state approved HPP is that with it, the town can have more local control over the siting of potential Chapter 40B multifamily proposals in town. This concludes the presentation of the WIN 2030 Vision Plan report. Thank you for your consideration. And again, thanks to all who participated and provided community input.
Thanks, Carlos. Did you want to do, or Council President, do we have time for a couple questions for Carlos, if there are
Yes,
some? Or
absolutely. Any the councils have any questions?
Council President,
Yes, Council Flockhart.
uh, Mr. Montana's, are we going to get copies of this visioning plan, the counselors?
Carlos, you're muted.
Sorry, yeah, we can distribute a PDF version via email easily.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Any other councils have questions? Councilor Terry.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Carlos. I think you had a slide that talked about the declining population from 1970. Do you know, can you be more specific as to, like, it seems like the last, 15 years it's been relatively stable. Do you know if that was all in the 80s and 90s? Do you know how that progression has gone?
It was from 1970 to 2010, the decline, and there's been a slight uptick of an estimated uptick because census counts haven't happened since 2010, but the American Community Survey does project estimates. So, and I believe the estimation between 2010 and 2019 was a potential 6% increase.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I'm sure we're going to have some from the public. Are you going to stay on, Carlos? Are you leaving the meeting?
I can if you need me for questions and answers, yes.
We really don't answer on public comment, but I think you probably should hear it would add to your number of surveys that you have taken. I think the report is pretty thorough. I think the council needs to get that report in their hands, read it over, and make some hard decisions as to where we're going from here. And I think it all falls in with the planning that we've already done with our center business district zoning. Talks about a lot of that multi-use facilities, and I think that we've been working towards this for many years on the council, and hopefully we will complete some of these projects well before 2030. Does anyone else have any questions on the council? Hearing none, then I guess we will move on. The next issue on the agenda is a citation, and that citation is for Susan McGuire, and I believe Susan is on the line as an attendee, but Susan has been a valuable member of the Board of Health for many years, and her expertise has been invaluable and very much needed during this pandemic, and we thank her for all the input that she has put in. And I'd like to read this Town of Winthrop Town Council citation. Be it known to all that the Town of Winthrop and the Winthrop Town Council hereby offers its appreciation to Susan McGuire, Board of Health. On behalf of the residents of the Town of Winthrop, we extend our most sincere gratitude for your past devotion, commitment, and medical experience to the Board of Health, and wish you well on your resignation. We offer you nothing but the best in all your future endeavors, given this 19th day of January 2021 at Winthrop, Massachusetts, and is signed by Philip Boncori, Esquire, Town Council President, Town Council members Rich Farino, Peter Christopher, James Lettieri, Stephen Ruggiero, Nick LaConte, Barbara Flockhart, Tracy Honan, and Rob DeMarco. Are you there, Susan? Would you like to say anything?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. First of all, thank you, Council President Boncori and town councilors. First, I'm humbled by the citation. Thank you very much. It's been my honor and privilege to serve the past 4 years on the Board of Health. And I'm proud of the board's team efforts to improve the health of our community. We had many challenges, but we're not done. And I look forward to continuing to support our community in different efforts. Presently, I've started working with Meredith Hurley on contact tracing and look forward to continuing my efforts to support the challenges that we face. And lastly, I want to thank you all for your collaboration over the years and for all that you do for our fine community. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. And anything you'd like to be doing, just give me a call. I'll be happy to.
All right. Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, we will now open up the first public hearing. We have 4 public hearings on the agenda. The number to call in for the public hearings is 1-301-715-8592. The webinar ID of 861-8617-1259. The first public hearing is a public hearing that the town council appropriate $272,250 for the cost of emergency repair of the collapsed water sewer main on Revere Street. I will now open that meeting. It is open, and any discussion from councilors first? Councilor Terry.
Thank you, Council President. This was discussed in our Finance Committee meeting, which happened prior to this. This is money associated with the collapsed sewer main on Revere Street, which the total cost for that project is probably going to come in somewhere around $350,000 to $370,000. This part of the money will be coming from the MWRA program, where 75% of this money is a grant. This is what we have left from that program. The rest of the money will be probably taking from the reserve account at Water and Sewer. This was discussed. The CFO gave us a great presentation on it. Director Calla gave us a great presentation also on the project. It is moving forward with a unanimous recommendation. So even though, just for clarification, we are appropriating the $270,000, the bond that we will be getting for this project will probably be somewhere around $75,000 to $80,000. So it's a great program by the MWRA. We just don't have more funds available from that program.
Okay, thank you. Any other council wish to be heard? All right, anyone in the public wish to be heard in the public hearing on the appropriation of $272,000?
There's no hands up.
I see no hands up myself. Okay, hearing none, I will close that public hearing. It's closed. The next public hearing is to accept the recommendation of TSAC on Terrace Avenue, Park Avenue, and Cottage Avenue. Councilor Christopher, I believe this was in your committee.
Yep, so we heard this last week in the Rules and Ordinances Committee. And so this was, we amended this motion to take out the part about making Cottage Ave a one-way, but kept the piece in it with the Terrace Ave and Park Ave. The reason being that we amended it was because we were concerned that the people who lived on Cottage Ave didn't have an opportunity to have the typical 3 hearings because it was amended in the TSAC committee. So I think I speak for the whole committee in saying that we're not adverse to the idea of adopting TSAC's recommendation here. It was merely just that we felt like we wanted to give that the people who live on that side of Cottage Ave an opportunity to be heard in front of the committee. So the amended motion was recommended unanimously.
Is there any discussion? Any other councilor? I see that Phil Ronan has his hand up, even though it says Paula. I'm sure it's Phil. Can you allow it? Phil, are you there?
Yep, I'm there. Hello to everybody. Good evening. Thank you for the hard work you do as a committee. I want to speak on behalf of the 100 people that signed that petition in reference to that situation up there. The recommendation by TSAC, I think, is a win-win for everybody. Number one, for the people that were concerned about their parking, they retain it. And for the people on the upper part of the hill that have no other egress other than down hillside or down Fawn Bar and have no other way up the hill other than up Terrace to Harbor View, it was an enormous safety hazard. It was brought up during the initial hearing. We have, because of the pandemic, unfortunately, one of my neighbors brought up the fact that, now we have all sorts of delivery vehicles there, and the hill is, having lived in the town my whole life and on the hill for 32 years, it's difficult to navigate if you have an idea where you're going up there. So I think their recommendation is a win-win for everybody. It's really the only way to go. It was an enormous safety hazard that they addressed. And I think going forward, it'll alleviate a lot of headaches. I'm hoping one of my neighbors who's in Raytheon working tonight, Jimmy Clark, was called in for one of the hearings before. Hopefully he said he'd try to get in tonight. He was almost hit by a car coming out Park Ave, I think he said, or maybe it was Cottage, about to head down when he was trying to pass up by the parked cars just about a week ago. So we've had numerous incidents up there, and we've been very, very lucky that there hasn't been an accident. So I want to thank the TSAC committee for their hard work and their in-depth analysis on that situation up there. And I urge you as a committee, before we have some sort of a tragedy up here, we've got a lot of young families that have moved in on the hill. And there's a lot of youngsters, babies, mothers with baby carriages and kids on bikes and everything like that. We need to make this hill safe. And I think this is a good starting point. So
Thank you, Phil.
I wish you guys Happy New Year, healthy one. And I urge you to take the recommendation and approve it from TSAC.
Thank you, Phil. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? Are there any other hands up?
I don't see any other hands at this time.
Okay, I will close the meeting on the Terrace Ave. It is closed. I'll now open the public hearing on the recommendation of TSAC to put a four-way stop sign on Grover's Avenue in Highland. Councilor Christopher, I believe that's you again.
Yes, so this was another recommendation from TSAC to put a four-way stop at the intersection of Grover's and Highland Ave, passed unanimously. I think it was brought to their attention because there had been a couple of accidents at that intersection. I think they were almost at the limit where they would have needed to put something there anyway, but we preempted that, and hopefully this will be a good step in the right direction for public safety in the Highlands.
Does anyone else want to be heard on the public hearing on the stop sign on Grover's and Highland Ave? Any councilor? Councilor Terry.
Hey, thank you. I don't disagree with this motion. I'm just wondering, I know when we did the four-way stop at Metcalf Square years back, and we had discussion on some other areas of town, and we were told, or I remember being told, that there were certain traffic count, there were certain restrictions that had to be met, or guidelines that had to be met in order to put in a four-way stop. Was there any truth to that, or has all the thresholds been met to make this a legal four-way stop?
Well, I know that all, the police department, DPW, everyone was represented at that meeting, and they felt comfortable recommending it. So I'm of the opinion that if there are any thresholds that exist, that they have been met here. But it was not something that we spoke about in the meeting.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wish to be heard on the four-way stop sign for Grover's Avenue and Highland Avenue?
I have Mike DeLuiso from the public.
Mike?
Evening, Council President. I can actually answer Councilor Terry's question. We did discuss that at TSAC as far as the manual uniform traffic control devices guidelines go. This comes very, very close to meeting the mandate in those guidelines. And as was stated at the meeting, those aren't hard set rules. They are in fact guidelines. And we've had 4 accidents a year at this intersection for the last 3 years. I believe 5 was the threshold to basically make it not necessarily a requirement, but make it recommended. And based on neighborhood input from other accidents that were not reported to the police department, we felt this was the best easily implemented solution to increase the safety at that intersection. There are other things that could be done, but they come at a cost and come in engineering that just wasn't feasible to wait for at this time. So this was the best recommendation we could make to get something done in a fast manner.
Thank you, Michael. Michael is on the TSAC committee, and he's our hearings officer for the town. Is there any other comment on this stop sign? Hearing none, I will close that public hearing and we'll open a public hearing from TSAC to allow parking on a portion of Beach Road. Councilor Christopher, again, Vice President Christopher.
So yes, this is another recommendation of TSAC. There's a section of Beach Road if you're it's on your right side if you're going up towards the beach in the Highlands, where there's a really wide stretch of road and there is no parking on one side of it. So it was brought to the attention of TSAC that it likely is a wider passage than you would need in order to have parking on that small strip of land. There's currently a sign there that says no parking on this side. So kudos to the TSAC. They went out and in this case, they actually worked to increase parking in a neighborhood where they aren't in a position to do that for safety reasons. So they were able to actually increase, give a few park spaces in this neighborhood, and it was recommended unanimously.
How many parking spaces does it give Peter?
This is going to increase to 2 parking spaces on that side of the road, whereas currently there's none. And that's just to make sure that we're adhering to the 15 feet rule from each intersection, because there's that little island up at the top of Shore Drive and Beach Road where you have an intersection, and whatever that little side street is, you still needed to push that in a little bit more. So we get 2 there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard from the council? Anyone else from the public? Any public on the TSAC?
No, no hands.
None, I see none either. I will close that public hearing. And we will now open public comment on any issue that anyone wishes to be heard on. Again, the public comment number is 1301-715-8592. And the ID is 861-8617-1259. I see at least 2 hands up.
Yes, sir. We have Julia Wallace with her hand up first.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Julia.
Happy Tuesday night. Thanks for taking my comment. I just have 2 quick things to say. First, I wanted to thank Councilor Honan, Councilor Ruggiero, and Councilor Christopher for making that very heartfelt and bold statement in response to the tragic events of the Capitol a couple of weeks ago. I think it means a lot to hear from our local representatives, that our democracy here is respected and upheld. And I know we don't like to always get put our hands in national politics, but I think in these unprecedented circumstances, it makes a difference. So thank you. It really means a lot. And fingers crossed for tomorrow. Second, thank you to Carlos for a great presentation. Having served on the advisory committee for Win 2030, I can, really vouch for the hard work that MAPC has done. And thanks for your involving us. And thank you to the town manager for initiating that process. I think it comes in great timing because I hear that we're getting a planner. We'll have a new town planner on staff soon, and perfect timing to really start putting some of these ideas into action and having, benchmarks and goals and data to tie our future meetings and decision making too. So I feel very optimistic about the potential of the Win 2030 plan to set us up for, a resilient, sustainable, equitable future for Winthrop. So thank you. Looking forward to being part of that process as it continues towards a master plan.
Thank you, Julia. Next. I see Peter Gill.
Yes, good evening, councilors. I'm very pleased to see on your agenda tonight that we're referring the middle school project over to the planning board. I know that it's a very, very complex issue that's involved there. There's so many different factions of people, whether it's the hockey players or the people that are using the gym, or some people want to use the auditorium. It's obvious to everyone that the empty building that used to be the middle school is costing us a lot of money, a lot of embarrassment, and some safety issues. I would urge that the people who are interested in this be very, very aware of what's happening and watch for these public meetings. The last several times we had big projects like this, which were nowhere near as complex as this one for the decision, people felt that they hadn't been informed. I feel that the informing process was out there, but people just didn't hear it. So I urge anybody, whether it's a neighbor who's looking at the middle school every day, or whether it's somebody who plays hockey or somebody who's on the interested in the gym or whatever, please keep an eye on it. I urge the council to keep talking that this is going on, that this project is going on. Because it's so complex, I would suggest that, and it's only a suggestion obviously, that the middle school itself be done first. And then, because the rest of it is so complex, that it could be, that part could wait. But it's urgent that we do the middle school right away. Thank you for your time. And again, thank you for moving that over to the planning board.
Thank you, former Council President Peter Gill. Is there anyone else on public comment for any issue whatsoever?
I don't see any hands up at this time. Oh,
I
I'm
see
sorry.
Suzanne Matucci.
We did.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Hi, Suzanne, yes.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. I just had to hop on and just mention how well stated Councillor Honen's statement was, and how important it is to make that statement. And so thank you very much for that initiative, Councillor Honen, and also for Councillor Christopher and Ruggiero for backing that up. Thank you guys very, very much for that.
Okay. Thank you, Suzanne. Is there anyone else that wishes to be heard in public comment? I don't see any other hands. Do you have anything, Larissa?
No, I don't see any hands at this time.
Okay, then we will move on to correspondence. Denise, what do you have for correspondence?
Okay, I did get a correspondence from Diane Sands, who was against any counselor reporting on the Capitol riots, and one from Donna Riley, who was very happy that the statement was made.
And
that's all I received. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to committee reports. I call on Finance Committee, Councilor Lettieri.
Thank you, Council President. Finance Committee met this evening. We were supposed to start at 5:30. We had a little issue with the Zoom, but we did begin at 6. We had several items on the agenda. One we already discussed, which was appropriating the $272,250 for the emergency repairs of the collapsed sewer main on Revere Street, which we did come back with positive recommendation. And again, that is not, the total cost of the project is about $350,000. The total amount of a bond that we will have to take as part of that 272 is somewhere around 75 to 80,000. And the rest is a grant from the MWRA, which we thank them for. We did discuss fiscal 21 budget potential shortfalls. We feel that the departments themselves are doing a fantastic job to stay within budget during this crazy time and crazy year. Our concern lies in the potential local receipts due to, whether it be excise tax, meals tax, room tax. So we absolutely maintain vigilance on that. And the CFO gave us, her word also that she is very much on top of this and will keep updating us throughout the next 4 months. We did discuss the trash contract, which, looks like it has, the contract itself has increased probably close to $300,000 from fiscal 20 to fiscal 21. So we're actively looking at remedies to that, and we will be having several meetings over the next 6 weeks to try to come up with some sort of solution. We talked about a water sewer audit. We know that had been discussed, and maybe, we did discuss whether audit was the right term or not, but looking at, doing a study that will help us better understand why we seem to have, our bills are basically higher than many other, if not all of the MWRA communities. The first major thing we talked about was the water loss, that we're over 20% and not really sure where it's coming from. So again, the CFO was extremely helpful with that. And we hope to have some sort of study recommendation by our next council meeting. So we'll start the ball rolling and hopefully get some answers soon. We also discussed money that we had appropriated very early on in the process to start us with the COVID pandemic, which has been reimbursed now. We want to just make sure that money had been reallocated to the town. It is part of the free cash from fiscal 20, so that was good news. And we also discussed with the 2 special elections coming up for the state representative seat, the cost associated with those 2 elections, which would probably, and that is, I think, under new business again, or will be shortly coming to us. But basically, the cost associated with that is going to be upwards of $40,000 to $43,000. And to make sure that there's money that's going to be allocated for that, seeing if there's any potential reimbursement, there should be some small percentage of that will be reimbursed by the state, not in a timely manner probably, but will be reimbursed at some point. So we had many things on the agenda. We did stop the meeting at 6:50, basically to give us all a little bit of time to rest before the 7 o'clock council meeting. But we will be having another finance committee meeting scheduled for next week. I am not sure the exact date, and I will go through Denise and have that posted on the website. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Terry. We're moving on to the next committee report, and that is Rules and Ordinance.
Sure. So we took up those 3 motions that we mentioned to open up the public hearings. And we amended the first one, like I said, and the other 2 were passed unanimously. So all 3 recommendations will be coming from the committee positively. 1 is amended.
Under old business today.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vice President Christopher. And are there any other committee reports? Did anyone else meet? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the town manager's report. And that's quite a haircut you got, Austin. You're trying to look like Jim Terry or what?
Got my glasses, my hair.
That's a good one. First off, I you know, I actually got sick of paying for haircuts, so I just did it myself. I did it in solidarity with my soon-to-be 3-year-old son. So Cash and I are both looking fresh. But thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate people noticing my change in appearance. First off, Win 2030 is a big thing. I've been talking about a visioning document since I came to Winthrop, and kind of setting a path forward that instead of us kind of going by the seat of our pants, we go a little bit more with a game plan. You know, we all watch sports. We all know that plays are drawn up and things like that. There's a million different ways to look at this, but now we have a little bit of a plan. And what we're going to try to do is start making the strategy of how to get to that plan, within that plan, and achieve some of those things. But then what do we need to do along the way? So I'm happy to see this happen. It's one of the things that is very important to me, and I hope people take the time to read it. It's a good looking report, and it's something that I think the community should be proud of. And we'll have it up on the website. And if anyone has any additional comments, feel free to send them into my office, and I think they can get included in the report for another few days. Beyond that, I'm excited that we're starting to make some additional progress concerning the solid waste information that Councilor Thierry brought up. That is another thing that was in my first budget presentation that I talked about solid waste and the Zero Waste Committee, which is going to start having meetings again. And we'll work through some of these things because, again, we want to get this figured out for the community and have an equitable waste system for everyone, and try to do our part in terms of offering good recycling programs, helping people with kind of directing them towards composting options and things like that. We also, last year during the summer, actually, the town received a grant from the state for what's called the Shared Streets Program. And what we ordered with that were actually parklets for the Center Business District. And what parklets are essentially little outdoor seating areas that can fit inside of parking spaces. People may often or other communities around the country. Unfortunately, they were really popular, and I wasn't the only one that had the same idea, it seems like, in the country. So it took a while, but they are arriving, I believe, this week or next week. So not sure if we're going to deploy those during the winter. We may explore that, but it is something exciting to have those and have another asset to have in the Center Business District, especially if we're in the unfortunate circumstance that there are still some restrictions on businesses once it gets a little bit warmer out and you don't necessarily need to wear a coat to eat some food. So I love everything that we can do to activate that space more, get people in that space, spending some more time in that space. The Win 2030, along with multiple other studies, have shown that we're trying and we need to get more foot traffic there. So it's another exciting addition to that area, and I look forward to it, them being rolled out and people being able to utilize them. With that, I'd like Meredith Hurley to unmute herself and give the council a quick update on where we stand with COVID right now.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen real quick, if you don't mind. Can you guys see it okay?
It's coming up. It's not up yet. Yep. Okay.
Okay, great. If I can just make it move, I'd be happy. There we go. Okay, so as of today, we have had 1,641 confirmed cases of COVID. We've unfortunately reported, I think, 2 additional deaths since I last was with you 2 weeks ago. Both individuals, one individual was in their 80s, the other individual was in their 90s. We currently have 162 in isolation, and 1,445 people have recovered from COVID at this point. We're continuing to be a high-risk community. Our incidence rate is at 95 per 100,000 on the average of 14 days, and our percent positive is 6.2%. They've reported that in the 14 days previous to, from January 1st to the 12th, we had 252 confirmed cases of COVID in Winthrop. So as for our testing site, so the updated hours, we're still maintaining our outdoor testing site, which is open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and Saturdays from 12 p. to 7 p. Outside at McKenna Court. The indoor location will be up by January 29th. It's going to be housed at the old middle school using the appointment-based Project Beacon platform, and it'll be available Monday through Thursday. There's going to be an overlay between when the outdoor site is still open and the indoor site goes live. They pushed it back by about 5 days because they were bumping into a few staffing issues, which is why it's now in the 4th week of January, where we had previously been aiming to be in the 3rd week. We continue to have greater than 2/3 of those that are being tested are Winthrop residents. This is the most updated data from the site in terms of percent positive. This past week, we captured a good amount of percent positive of those that were tested. We saw a higher amount, although the testing volume was down, the higher concentration of those that were being.
Meredith, can you stay on that side for a second? You're talking about the yellow, right? Is the percent positive?
Yep.
And that's the axis on the right. Just wanted to make sure that, okay.
Yeah, so that's a percent positive of Winthrop residents that access the site. So you'll see how obviously it went up. The concentration of those that were positive were higher as Winthrop residents. And in terms of the vaccine rollout, this is the next big undertaking that we're going to be looking at. So this past Friday, Saturday, and also tomorrow evening, we've partnered with Winthrop, with Revere and Chelsea to vaccinate our first responders. So by tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, we'll have vaccinated 600 first responders through the 3 communities, also reaching into the FBI offices in Chelsea, and already have the 2nd dose. So this is the Moderna vaccine. So 28 days from when the first dose is given, the 2nd dose will then be administered. So that's already been scheduled for people. It went extremely smoothly. I cannot say enough about the planning. Revere was the lead on this, and they did an amazing job. I think the state is pushing us to use a appointment-based system, which is great because it captures a lot of the information prior to people walking through the door. Really, the vaccination itself takes probably 6 minutes, and folks will sit for 15 to 30 minutes after, and then they're out the door. So it was a very smooth process. So now the state has asked the 3 communities what we want to do for the next step. So we're working on a plan to stand up a clinic for those that are included in the final phase of this vaccination, which would be home-based healthcare workers and healthcare workers are doing non-COVID facing care. I didn't catch the governor's press conference, I think today, where they announced the opening of another super site at Fenway Park. Also, there's one currently at Gillette Stadium. So I expect that we're going to see more of these going forward. This is actually one of infographic that I like a little bit better. I think it's a little bit more clear for people. So we're planning, we just had a planning meeting right before this. So we're planning on doing the final phases of phase 1, the first week of February. Tomorrow, the city of Revere will order 500 additional doses for those that 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 lie in phase one. And unfortunately, we're at the behest of the state. They won't let us move to the next phase until they give us a go. So we're thinking the beginning of phase two will be mid-October.
February.
Yeah, sorry. It feels like it should still be October, mid-February. I'm looking down at my case notes. They have October on it. So yeah, so happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Is at any one time Winthrop going to get its own vaccinations, or is everybody from Winthrop going to have to go through that Revere?
No, I don't think it's sustainable. We were talking through that today. When we're looking forward as to the populations that we're going to be at the beginning part of phase two. For example, phase two I think it's step 2 or step 3 are our public schools. We're the only ones that are returned hybrid out of the 3 communities. So they may take that into consideration and change their priority as they're rolling out. The state is now acknowledging that they're giving some leeway that we can, the last thing we want to do is put any sort of vaccine to waste. And once we receive the vaccine, we have 30 days to use that vaccine. And then every time, and it's a multi-dose vial, so every vial that is punctured has to be used within 6 hours. So there's a fair amount of planning that goes into that, which is why it's really important to be uber organized. But if, say, at the end of a clinic, there's 10 doses that have to be used within an hour, we do have the ability to move. We just have to justify to the state what our decision making is and why if there's any movement outside of where they're letting us stay. So yes, we are planning. I don't think it's sustainable to do these. We will see. It's a lot like with the testing sites. I feel like where 3 months from now we'll be able to access vaccine clinics pretty regularly. But in the meantime, we really want to get to our most vulnerable populations. So I think that we'll be doing what we call their closed pods, closed points of distribution.
My thought was, since we had been doing the flu clinic so well, and we've done so many of them with the MRC, that we would be somewhat prepared to do these vaccines if we could get them and get them to people that really, are in the category that you're supposed to get them.
Yeah.
Are you working at the Revere facility?
Yeah, I've been there the last 2 days over the weekend, and I'll be there tomorrow night.
Okay.
It's good learning. It's been great to kind of be in the middle of it and kind of, see the organization that that goes into it in the scheduling and the throughput, so that we can do that, kind of replicate it here.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any questions for Meredith? Councilor Terry.
Thanks. And again, thank you, Meredith, for all you do. And just a couple of quick questions where you've been involved with the vaccines, and we've had first responders get the vaccines. Have there been any negative effects from the vaccine?
No, of the 400 people that we've done so far, there was Cataldo ambulance was on staff at the clinic, which is what we would do also here. So no, I think, so those folks that had had an anaphylactic reaction to anything in the past are the ones that stay for 30 minutes, but no, knock on wood, nothing out of the ordinary.
Well, that's good to hear. And earlier in your presentation, you mentioned going to once we leave the tennis courts, going to the middle school, but could you be a little more specific? Is it the middle school cafeteria, the middle school gym?
Oh, sure. Yeah, great question. Yeah, so it's the middle school gym that we're moving to. So the hours are going to be, I can't definitively say yet what the goal is to kind of start off moderate and see how it all works out, and then with the opportunity to increase the capacity over a couple of days. So most likely Monday, so Tuesday and Thursday will be like longer days, like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday would be like 8 to 5, 8 to 6.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit shorter on Friday so that we can get it all cleaned up for the weekend.
And just a quick follow-up to that, hopefully we could coordinate with the hockey rink too, because I know like Monday, Wednesday are game days, or Friday, Saturday, just for parking, and because it's not like a drive-through like Revere, so people are going to have to get out of their car, and I guess we could figure out how many appointments we're taking on every 15 minutes or whatever that is. But I know in Revere, it seems that as long as you have an appointment, like if you had a 4 o'clock appointment in the afternoon, you could go at 10 o'clock and they take you. So I don't know if that's something. Yeah, you could go and you show your little thing from your phone and they'll take you. So I think we don't want to just inundate that.
No, we don't want to do that. We're looking forward to having it a little bit more controlled and predictable, I guess is a better word, predictable.
And maybe this is more for Austin or whatever, but if it's at the auditorium or at the gym, I'm assuming we've addressed all the health issues, because we've been told, or I've been told when I wanted to use that for polling, that we have no internet down there, we have poor air quality, even though the kids have been in there, but I'm assuming we've addressed that.
Yep, we've Project Beacon, who we've been working with on this, has taken all of those things into account. They'll actually be bringing in internet themselves. These are people who have been setting up stuff outside a lot of places. So they have become pretty adept at setting up these sites. In terms of, Meredith and the Chiefs have been working hard with Project Beacon concerning our traffic concerns and the parking with this site and the timing of these appointments, because we know the rink is utilized. We don't want to impact the school parking, the school traffic as well. So what we're going to do is invest in some signage for the Walden Street lot. We're going to be trying to direct the flow of people to the best of our abilities to kind of lessen the impact of these testing days as much as possible. So we should be able to do that. And I mean, Meredith, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like Project Beacon has been doing this a fair amount of places now. They're the ones running Revere and Lynn and Framingham and New Bedford and a couple of the other. They, from my perspective, they're the best people to be working with in the state on this type of stuff. And they have, this is gonna be one of their first appointment-based yet walk-up locations. Our problem really is that the logistics of setting up a drive-through location, similar to what they have in Revere or Lynn or other places, is they have places where these cars can queue and we don't. And we've seen for long enough what this does to the community, and it's been very difficult to deal with, I know. So we kind of requested to shift it to indoors with inclement weather and things like that as well. There are limitations to that site. We've identified them to them as well, and it seems like they're still very interested in the site, and they're excited. It's another testing location for them, and it gives them more knowledge of what's happening within the state.
Just one follow-up. Was there any thought about the landing? You have ample parking. You have a brand new $1 million building that's really not utilized at this time of year. You have really nothing going on at the Winthrop Yacht Club. It's a big empty lot, basically, with the building.
So it was definitely in the running. We were looking at it. It's just the spacing of the building. The kind of that community room doesn't give them enough space for the amount of testing that they're looking to do.
Okay, Austin, do you have more to your report? Councilor Joe, you have a question for Meredith?
I do, yes. Thank you, Council President. Meredith, thank you so much for everything, as always. Just, this isn't a Winthrop specific question, but just generally, folks who are waiting for the vaccine, what should they be doing? Is there an active measure that someone should be taking if they are of, age 60, 65 or older?
Yeah.
Or should folks just sit and wait tight and until the vaccine will come to them? Could you just talk a little bit about what people can do to make sure they don't miss their spot, so to speak?
Yeah. So I think that there's been a lot of frustration and confusion around the vaccine rollout. And from what I was on a couple of calls today, so the state is at the purview of the federal government. So as much as they're making, as quickly as they're making the 2 vaccines that have been approved, they're getting sent here through our allocation. So it's hard for the state to then come and tell us what they have in their reserves. So what they asked us to do today is kind of flip it and say how many people, and we have to do it in 2-week increments, where it says, how many people do you think you have the capacity to vaccinate? Like, for example, that first week in February, that clinic, we said we can do 500. Give us 500, we will find the 500 people that we want to do. And once they commit back to us that they're going to give us 500, we will push out those 500. So, I think that they have plans to stand up more clinics, these larger capacity clinics. But I think that we as a community have the ability to service some of these folks, especially, when you consider folks that are homebound, they're not going to be able to necessarily get themselves to some of these clinics. So these are all really big issues and, equitable issues.
Right.
I got a really amazing email today that Mystic Valley Elder Services that does the Meals on Wheels, they've shifted under their board of directors, and they're now they're shifting their operations to provide rides for people to clinic sites, which I think is phenomenal. I think that that's exactly what we're going to start seeing more of. So we've already started planning. I have a pretty in-depth meeting coming up about looking at all of these issues. For example, the system that I was talking to you about, and this actually is a great question too. I should have also brought this up about the testing site, is for people that have accessibility issues. So not everybody can make appointments online using technology. So we have a couple of plans in the work to address that. And that will essentially be the same thing also with making vaccine appointments, because we still have to control for COVID precautions, not to put large amounts of people in smaller spaces. So that's kind of where our planning is going. There's a lot of things that we want to try and tease out. And there was no way that any drop of vaccine was going to get wasted over the weekend. And I think that that's kind of how we feel, is especially if we have the ability to then have a bit of wiggle room to potentially move on to a smaller catchment. With this, the system that we use is called PrepMod. And so we have the ability to create waiting lists. So so we can, send out links to people, I'm talking kind of February, March, send out links to people to register, and and then have like a backup of 20 folks. They've already asked that at our vaccine clinic tomorrow, like, come with the names of 2 or 3 first responders that you think haven't registered or would like to register, so that we can call them at the last moment, or, things like that. And kind of with these sectors that are going to be rolling out in phase 2. For example, like the schools, we'll be sending communications in the next probably week through the school system to say, we don't know when it's coming, but our plan is to do a closed vaccine clinic in each one of the schools ideally. But we need a commitment from you as to who's planning to get vaccinated so that we can plan for that. And it's going to be the same thing with public and with the low income and senior housing.
Sure.
So yeah. So as for, kind of, I'll try to, update you all as much as possible and really try and put out clear communication. I will say it's been confusing for me to understand like what their expectation is of us. 6 weeks ago, right after, probably right before the vaccine was even approved, the state was kind of like, don't worry, like we're not expecting local health to take really too much of a role in this, and that's really shifted.
Okay.
They were banking on the federal vaccine program with CVS and Walgreens. It doesn't seem like, ramp up as fast as we want them to. So yeah, I think the best thing is to kind of hone where your information is coming from and stick with those sources.
Sure, and it's great to hear that we have the elderly, vulnerable, low-income, non-internet users in mind, and that's just one thing that I was thinking about. So thank you, Meredith, again.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Meredith. Anyone have any other questions for Meredith? Hearing none. Austin, are you done with your report or you have more?
I'm all set unless there are questions directly from me.
Councilor Terry, you have questions for Austin?
Just one question on the report. You mentioned those parklets. Can you just go into them a little bit more? I'm assuming that we got them as part of a grant, which is great. Are they all inclusive in terms of like tables and chairs and stuff like that? And how are you going to, I'm assuming they take up 1 or 2 parking spaces. How are you going to decide where they're going to go?
We're going to somewhat be agnostic to where they go. That's the good thing about them, is that we can kind of pick them up and move them pretty easily. Let me actually, Anna, do you remember the company that we purchased them for? I can't remember off the top of my head.
1 second. I don't remember off the top of my head. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Is it Street Life, Austin?
Yes, it is Street Life. Excuse me. I can pull it up on my computer so I can share my screen. So it's essentially another piece of street furniture. And obviously I can't find a good example of it on my computer.
Is it similar to what like I've seen on Newberry Street, Boylston Street in town?
Exactly like that. We can pick them up and move them in different places. If there is a snow emergency, for example, and we're trying to clear snow out of the Center Business District, or we need to move snow around, we can actually pick them up and move them. If it wasn't COVID times and we weren't trying to figure out how to provide more public space, we would most likely be figuring out, we would be picking them up and putting them in somewhere like the Landing for the winter, for example. But they take up I think it's 2 parking spots each. And again, we're not installing them until we have a better idea from some of the business owners where people would like them located. So just a quick survey. Don't want to negatively impact anyone. The physical therapy place in the Center Business District, I'm not going to drop it in front of there in a handicap spot or something like that. But it's a new way to bring some much needed outdoor seating to that area. And longer term, when all of the street reconstruction is done and we kind of have like a new French Square area, we could actually utilize those in other parts of town if we wanted to. So it's a really interesting thing for us, I think, because we don't have the flexibility to put them in a location. If it doesn't work after a week, we can pick them up and move them somewhere else. And that's, for an example of where it's been successful, is in the city of Philadelphia, what they did was they initially introduced these on, they put one per city block. So they take up 2 parking spots of, usually there's between 10 and 15 spots on a city block on each side of the road. They would drop 1 per block. Then what they would do is drop 2, and if no one complained, then they would take some of that. They were basically taking parking away. And putting in new seating, new places for people to eat and things like that. And my wife actually grew up in suburban Philly, so I've kind of seen the progression over the 10 years that we've been together. They've ditched parking from entire streets and installed this type of seating in places. So just like what Newberry Street was this summer, which was kind of crazy because there were people there, but it gives a really cool opportunity longer term to have some outdoor seating and kind of build some of those community spaces. And again, the flexibility is the best thing. We can pick them up and move them. If someone doesn't like it somewhere, we can pick it up and move it and put it somewhere else. It's not something that needs to be stationary. Just like those SUFA signs, we can unbolt those and move them to another location if we think we're not getting enough foot traffic somewhere or something like that. Oh, Larissa just sent me it. Larissa, you want to pull that up on your screen and just screen share quickly? Because I have that on my laptop, or on my, okay. If you could, so that's an example of one. If you scroll down a little bit, I think there should be another picture. So that it's going to be a little more wooden than that, but that's an idea of what it looks like. So it's essentially something that's on like pallets that we can pick up the pieces and move somewhere else. So again, I'm personally agnostic to where they go. I would like, first off, the business community to be on board with it, but also if there are places in town that think they need some additional seating, we'd be more than happy to engage and figure out how we can help them.
I just think it's important to make sure that we coincide with all the construction going on down there. It's no sense like making things more congested.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's not the intent. And that's why it's great that they can just be picked up and moved. Steve Cal is on here. Steve was one of the first people that I asked about this, I was like, is this going to mess up all the work there? And that's what's good is you can kind of pick them up and move them. And the flexibility of being able to pick them up and move them is during the construction phases over this calendar year, we can actually move them around depending on the construction. They do not take up any more space than the parking spots that are already there. So they're not going to be impacting the lake of travel for cars or anything like that. So exciting things. And again, I wanted to try to give the community the flexibility that we can pick these up and move them. So asset, we can decide where to place the assets. And if people don't appreciate the asset, move it somewhere else.
We're not putting those out till the spring or anyway, are we? We're not intending.
You know, we don't actually have to bolt them down, so they are something that we could deploy in the next week or two. I think that it could be a neat thing to install maybe 1 or 2 of them just so people got a sense of them. But that's in the sense of we don't have much outdoor seating, and if people want to grab a sandwich somewhere and have somewhere to sit and eat, this is potentially somewhere else for them to do that. So I know myself and I think others restaurant once or twice over the past year, as much as I love food, but it gives me the ability to go grab something somewhere and then eat outside. Even if it's 30 degrees out, some people like to sit outside in their coat and, chow down. So, or, read a book or play with your kids, whatever. We can deploy them. We don't have to deploy them. Again, I only want to deploy them in places where people think they would be utilized, and don't want to negatively impact any individual business that needs the accessibility concerning patients or people that need to use.
Thank you. I have one other question. Did we have a problem with Comcast that they're telling some people when they call them their internets are going down, and they've reached capacity and they're gonna have to pay more? Have you heard something to that extent? That now that all the kids are on,
So there was, within our network of the town and school, there were bandwidth limitations within our network. I believe Xfinity on their own is deploying some additional fees, but that's not anything that we have any say over. We only have, through our ascertainment agreement, that deals with their cable television bills, not their internet service. So we can't even really negotiate about that. In terms of the stuff with our municipal buildings, including the schools, we've been working with our contractors that help us with our information technology services. My phone was messed up today, my internet was slow. Our stuff within the building made it difficult to work for. Sorry, and you mentioned that, so let me move a little closer. We were limited in municipal buildings today as well, so we're trying to fix stuff on our end. But that capacity problem, that is Xfinity adding additional charges for when people are video chatting on HD, it uses a fair amount of bandwidth. Same thing with Netflix or Fortnite that kids are playing, or whatever have you. So
they can charge us more money if we reach a certain capacity in use.
Yes, yes, there are capacity limits to internet usage. That's in most standard agreements. Although they will call the plan unlimited, those plans are majority of the time not unlimited, and that speaks that. I could talk for days about this, but this talks too about the fact that internet is really a utility now. It's not necessarily different than your phone bill or your electricity or anything like that. But that is not something that the FCC has weighed in on yet. I've actually advocated for them to do that previously. So that is, Anna just sent me the language on it from Xfinity. The nation's largest internet provider announced that starting January 1st, it will extend its 1.2 terabyte cap to previously exempt service areas, meaning once you hit that limit, you'll have to pay more to use more. So a terabyte of data is that's a lot of data, but when you're streaming things in 4K and doing video chats and things like that, it takes up a lot of data. And again, we have no say over their internet, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Moving on.
Question, follow up on that. What ability do we have to get FiOS in town then to try to compete with that?
Verizon only set up in Boston. They're actually getting out of the business of providing service. They have sold off their franchises in Florida and Texas and California. Verizon's pivoting towards 5G. Their FiOS deployment has been pretty limited in Boston. What they got out of that was the contract with GE when GE was going to set up headquarters in town, which didn't come to fruition, unfortunately. But then what Verizon is doing within Boston that was most important to them was they're installing nodes, which are the little things that they put on top of telephone poles and light poles and things like that, to provide more 5G service, because within the next couple of years, you won't necessarily have to run cable through your house. You're going to have like a box that talks to the box outside of your house and does it that way. That's what 5G and 6G eventually promised. So that's what Verizon is building out for. And the only reason they built out FiOS in Boston was because Boston made a community agreement with them about the deployment of it, so that
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the school department update. The school committee did not meet this week due to the holiday. They will be meeting next week. But I did speak with the superintendent today at length, and we're in our third week of hybrid learning, and it's going very well. We've had 0 in-school spreading of COVID. They are managing students and staff that are in quarantine, but nothing has been spread from school. It's all household spread, where a parent would get it and bring it to the children, but there has been no need of any spread going on in the school. They are bringing in the BinX Now testings, the rapid tests. Our athletics are up and running. There's been no spreading there. The basic thing is that all the students have been doing a wonderful job following the protocols. They're wearing their masks. The school separation is working. The PPE, the plexiglass is working, keeping people apart. And in the athletic facilities, they're following strict protocols. The coaches are doing a good job keeping everybody apart in the rink and in the gymnasium. So it looks really well. And our kids are actually engaged in sports now and doing well. Okay, any questions on the school department report? Hearing none, we'll go into old business. First matter in old business is the town council appropriate $272,250 for the emergency repair of a collapsed sewer main. Do you have that motion, Councilor Terry?
I do, Council President. I move that the Winthrop Town Council adopt the following order. Order that the town appropriate the sum of $272,250, pay cost of emergency repair of a collapsed section of 8-inch VC sewer main on Revere Street and installation of a CIPP structural liner to prevent further collapse of the 8-inch VC sewer main on Revere Street, found to be structurally degrading, including all costs incidental and related thereto, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the town manager, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 8, Paragraph 14, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds, notes, or the town there, or that the treasurer, with the approval of the town manager, is authorized to borrow all or a portion of such amount from the Massachusetts Water Association, Resource Association, and in connection therewith to enter into a loan agreement and or financial assistance agreement with the authority, and otherwise to contract with the authority with respect to such loan and for any grants or aid available for the project or for the financing therefore. That the town manager is authorized to accept and expand any grants or aid available for the project or the refinancing, that the amount of the authorized borrowing for the project shall be reduced by the amount of any such grants or aids received, that the town manager is authorized to take any or other necessary to carry out this project, and that the said premium received upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this order, less any such premiums applied to the payment of the cost of the issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this order in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed or to pay such cost of like amount.
Okay. Is that's coming out of committee with a favorable recommendation, so it needs no second. Is there any discussion on this by councilors? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying yes when your name is called.
Council Ruggiero,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Councilor Terry,
Yes.
Council Honan,
Yes.
Councilor Conti, Councilor Farino,
Yes.
Vice President Christopher,
Yes.
President Boncory.
Yes,
Thank you.
motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is a motion from TSAC's recommendation on Terrace Avenue, and Councilor Ruggiero and Councilor Christopher, Vice President Christopher, you have that motion, is that correct?
Yes, I move that the town council accept the recommendation of the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee from the December 16th, 2020 meeting to make Terrace Avenue a one-way street between Park Avenue and Cottage Avenue by amending section 102410 of the town ordinances titled Schedule of One-Way Streets as follows, to insert the following line into the table: Terrace Avenue from Park Avenue to Cottage Avenue.
And that is coming out of committee with a favorable recommendation. It needs no second. Any discussion? Councilor Terry. Can't hear you because you're muted.
I thank Councilor Christopher and the committee for the TSAC especially. I'm very reluctant to vote on any one ways. We could go through this town and probably 90% of the streets will have issues one way or another. I know we could only take them one by one. But I do notice that even in precinct 2, we had a one-way back 7-8 years ago, and it was a trial at least for 3 months before we go and change the ordinance and everything else, because you go through different seasons, especially in the summer down the point, and you'll notice a completely different traffic pattern. So I cannot vote for this or for any one ways changing, and especially in these times. But again, I thank Council Vice President Christopher and the TSAC.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Councilor DeMarco?
Yeah, just real quick. Councilor Christopher, did you have any negative public comment at your last meeting about this at all?
No, I didn't.
No. Okay. Thank you.
And I know that a petition was sent in with 100 and something signatures on it by Mr. Ronan, who was on the hearing earlier. All right, hearing no other questions, all those in favor of passing this motion to make Terrace Avenue a one-way, signify by saying yes when your name is called.
Councilor Ruggiero?
Yes.
Councilor Flockhart?
Yes.
Councilor DeMarco?
Yes.
Councilor Terry?
No.
Councilor Honan?
Yes.
Councilor Conti?
Yes.
Councilor Farino?
You're
You're on
muted.
mute. You're muted, Rich. Vice President Christopher?
Yes.
President Boncory?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion carries. Next motion is a motion to adopt the recommendation of TSAC to have a four-way stop sign at Grover's and Highland, and I guess that is also Vice President Christopher.
I move that
you should change your name to say Vice President Christopher, so we don't keep.
I move that the town council accept the recommendation of the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee from their November 18th, 2020 meeting to install a four-way stop sign at the intersection of Grover's Avenue and Highland Avenue, and amend 10-2020 of the town ordinances titled Schedule of Stop Intersections as follows: Highland Avenue northbound and southwestbound at the intersection of Grover's Ave.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of putting this four-way stop sign at Highland and Grover's Ave signify by saying yes when your name is called.
Councilor Ruggiero?
Yes.
Councilor Flockhart?
Yes.
Councilor DeMarco?
Yes.
Councilor Terry?
Yes.
Councilor Honan?
Yes.
Councilor Conti?
Yes.
Councilor Farino?
Yes.
Vice President Christopher?
Yes.
President Boncory?
Yes,
Thank you.
motion carries. Next motion is to allow parking on a portion of Beach Road. Again, Councilor Vice President Christopher, you changed that very fast.
Okay. I move that the town council accept the recommendations of the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee from the September 16, 2020 meeting to allow parking on a portion of Beach Road where it is currently prohibited, and amend section 10-1690 of the town ordinances titled Parking Prohibited Upon Certain Streets as follows: to delete the following line from the table: Beach Road on both sides from Winthrop Shore Drive to Locust Street, and insert the following lines into the table: Beach Road west side from Winthrop Shore Drive to Locust Street, Beach Road east side from Winthrop Shore Drive to a point 250 feet southwesterly, and Beach Road eastern side from Locust Street to a point 30 feet northeasterly.
Any discussion on the motion? It doesn't need a second because it came out of committee. Councilor Farino.
I just have one question. So I'm trying to envision this. As you're coming from the Highlands, Crest Ave, I think one of the reasons why that may have had no parking there was the sight of view coming over the crest of the hill. Is that going to be affected?
Well, this is
Is it further down?
It's at the very bottom of the hill, so I don't think that there would be any issues. I think that at a time there was probably an issue if it was a little bit more narrow. You might have an issue with the line of sight because of cars on that side of the street, but the road is so wide now that I don't think that you have that. But maybe Steve would like to talk about it a little bit more. I don't think you'd have a horizon.
Yeah, I apologize for not having that during the other discussion. I was just imagining it in my mind. And, I know a few cars have gone over right through the green bars at one point because they're coming, the person's coming up from Shore Drive and down from the Highlands and, they swerve or whatever and they lose control.
These spots would be at the very bottom, so it wouldn't. They'd be like closer, like down at the bottom of that hill.
It's not the intersection at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. As I said, this is out of committee. Doesn't need a seconded. All those in favor of allowing some parking on Beach Road, please indicate by saying yes when your name is called.
Councilor Ruggiero,
Yes.
Councilor Flockhart,
Yes.
Councilor DeMarco,
Yes.
Councilor Terry,
Yes.
Councilor Honan,
Yes.
Councilor Conti,
Yes.
Councilor Farino,
Yes.
Vice President Christopher,
Yes.
President Boncory.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. All right, moving on to new business. We have two motions that have come before me that I have. And first one is to transfer $44,000 for the town clerk's office for the upcoming election costs. And I am going to send that to the finance committee. I don't think that I think we can handle that between now and February 1st meeting. Second motion.
Second.
Okay, no, I think I can just send it to the committee. I don't need a motion to do it. The second motion is to authorize the payment of unpaid bills of a prior year. Comes out to, I think, a total of $2,000 and change. And I'm going to send that also to the finance committee for a recommendation at our next meeting. Okay. Also under council new business, there was a motion. I don't seem to have it with me here in the package, but it was a motion to amend the council rules to include permanent Zoom participation. And I think that was Councilor DeMarco's motion. Do you want to discuss your motion?
I mean, this was just basically taking off what people said during public comment last week. We're going to go back into the building at some point, and the Harvey room or wherever we have it has limited capacity. So, I mean, if people want to be able to log in on Zoom, watch on WCAT, come to the building, I figure the more participation in our town meetings, the better. And this seems like something that people really want. It would also allow a counselor who, for some reason, couldn't make it to the meeting to also be able to attend remotely.
Okay, and I will send that motion to the Rules Committee to take a look at the rules and see what we have to do between the Rules Committee and the Attorney General's office to allow permanent Zoom hearing, because hopefully we get more attendance. So that, although I see we're losing a lot of attendees due to time. Okay. The next thing is
President Boncory, I think Councilor Lettieri had something to say. I think he had his hand up.
I just had a quick question. If it was permanent in meaning, I think it's great for the residents and stuff like that, but I thought there were rules that we can't participate, in normal circumstances, we can't participate remotely. So I don't know if that's, through the pandemic, or I understand for citizens to ask a question, that's a good thing to be continuous, but I don't know about the councilors.
Yes,
So-
I don't, that's why I said I was sending it to the Rules Committee to check with the Attorney General's office. Because I think there are some limitations to what the councils can actually do via Zoom after the pandemic. And according to what our rules that we have now. Okay. The next issue is Town Council moved to the Joint Committee a recommendation on the middle school zoning. And we've been waiting for a recommendation from Jeffrey Logan on the middle school zoning. And we've been waiting for our new planner to come in, when she is coming in the next 2 weeks. It's Rachel Kelly. I want to welcome her when she does come in. And let's get this middle school zoning to the joint committee that we set up. And hopefully they will have a recommendation to send it to the planning board by our next committee. Okay, so that's where that is going. Under new business, we also have a discussion on election polling locations. And we spent quite a bit of today between myself and Austin and the clerk's office, school department, talking about this. So Austin, you want to take the lead on this?
Sure. So we have some issues potentially with our polling locations. And is Lisa Howard on? I wanted to give her the opportunity to speak on this.
I believe Lisa is on.
Yes, I'm here. I had to go off my computer because my battery died and my charger is in the wall at the town hall. So I am on my phone, but I'm here.
Okay.
Did you want me to speak on it?
Yeah, Lisa, could you go ahead and just talk about some of the issues that
Sure. So as everyone knows, there is a special election that has to be held, and the dates of that special election are in two parts. The second would be the primary of March, and the 30th would be the actual election. So for the school department, obviously there are precincts that vote in our high school, on the high school side of the middle high school complex, and at the Arthur T. Cummings School. Both of those days on the calendar approved by the school committee are school days. They are not days that were, obviously, we did not anticipate the need for the special election. So given the short notice, I wanted to do a little research to figure out how that may work. And in doing that, looked at doing a risk benefit assessment of the impact of holding an election on those 2 days, which would necessitate us having to cancel school at a minimum for the middle high school students, as well as the Cummings School students. So some of the things we looked at right now, I'm sure a lot of folks don't know, but our cafeteria space, which is where the elections take place in a normal election, are currently set up as dual space, classroom space, as well as lunchroom space. There are no lunch tables in there, so the movement of furniture, if you walked in there now, you would look at it as if it was a big classroom. There's probably 70 desks set up with partitions and plexiglass for our students, whether they're in class in a 6-foot distancing manner or whether they're having lunch as well. The other impact in terms of us, if we were to have to close the schools for the election, unfortunately, we're back in school in the hybrid model. As you know, we have 2 cohorts of learners. Our Monday, Tuesday cohort, which is our blue cohort, is already missing 2 days of in-person learning because of the 2 Monday holidays. Monday holiday we just had, and then a Monday during Memorial Day. So if we were to, obviously the Tuesday has to stay for both of those election days, though it's not a choice for the community to change those days. So those would be 2 additional Tuesdays. The cohort blue would not be able to be physically in the schools for in-person learning on those days. That creates an equity issue between the blue cohort and the gold cohort, which are our Thursday, Friday students as well. If we were to just completely cancel school on those days, You also have to add those days to the end of the school year, which is, we start to bump into teacher contract issues as well. So I wanted to put all of that information out there to the town council, because it's my understanding that if a polling location were to be changed, that notification has to be given to those precincts 20 days before the first primary, which would be on March 2nd. So I wanted to put it out there to the council, just to have that information out there, that the impact after I did the risk assessment on the school seems pretty deep, as opposed to changing the polling location potentially to the original polling locations back in the day, which is the old middle school, and then potentially changing the voting that takes place at the high school over to the senior center. Both of those locations are accessible in terms of handicap accessibility. And that's sort of where I'm at. I have some major concerns, obviously, given the climate of the country. I would not be recommending that the kids be in school on the day of an election, for between the climate of the country and COVID being so impactful. That's certainly something that I'm not in favor of. And then obviously I'm not in favor of students losing out on any in-person learning days, given the fact that, the majority of our kids are only receiving 2 days of in-person as we sit now. And that is what I wanted to fill you in on.
Thank you, Lisa. Austin?
Sure. So Denise distributed language to the council, concerning language about potential vote on the matter. This is a really unique situation. I have spoken with Joanne D'Amato, the assistant town clerk, who's been doing a tremendous job. And one of the things she brought up to us that I hadn't taken into consideration is that because this doesn't have all of the things that come with it that a presidential election does, or a statewide election, we're not required to have the same type of early voting. We're not required to use the poll pads and things like that. So we have a little bit more flexibility in the way that we set up an election at this point in time. Lisa makes some really fair points, and she really caught my attention in terms of the equity to the children who are in the schools. It's going to be very difficult. I don't know a solution for making up those 2 days. Not that we could have anticipated the situation happening. I don't have a good solution to present to Lisa in terms of still trying to hold it in the schools. With that though, in considering the auditorium at the middle school, or the gymnasium at the middle school, without the requirement of internet for the poll pads, that actually gives us flexibility in being able to consider that as a location, which I hadn't thought of before. We would have to not have testing at that site for at least that day, and maybe the day before too, just in terms of sanitizing the space and things like that. In terms of the senior center, that is something that, because this happened so rapidly, Kathy Dixon, this is most likely the first that she's hearing about this. I think that that is a feasible location as well. It just needs to be walked through, and we need to figure out how to set it up correctly. So we have some work to do on this, but I think we should really take Lisa's concerns into account, and not make this the norm, but make a shift for this election being the special, unique situation that we're in, and with the time crunch that we have, and our hybrid learning model, I think we should really you all should strongly consider changing these voting locations. And with that, that language presented gives a pretty straightforward way to shift the locations, and you're required to do it 10 days prior to the election. So there is still time, but we're getting very tight in terms of the window that we have. And again, we just want to have a good, fair election that is run correctly and properly. Having a situation where our students are learning in hybrid fashion, where they're learning in spaces that we never anticipated them learning in schools, has presented us with a difficult rock and hard place situation. But I do think the solution seems to be the middle school or the former middle school and the senior center. I think that's our path of least resistance and our feasible options at this point in time.
And Austin, if I just may add one more thing, I do believe that the town, from what I recall, and Joanne may know better than I on this, but I believe if the location is going to be moved, that the town may have to conduct a study prior to the vote of whether or not there is any disparate impact on certain groups. So I do that risk-benefit assessment anyway for my school, and to see what the risk and the benefit would be for any such move such as that, or any other big impact decision that we have to make within the school district. So it really vets it out to see how this impacts the school, how it impacts student learning, how it may impact collective bargaining with teachers. And so as part of my risk assessment, I also just did a little bit of a look in terms of the impact of changing the location on the community. And I'm happy to share that in part or whole with the town council to alleviate any additional steps, so they could use that towards their study, if that study even has to be done. The council for the town may want to look at that. That's just my experience from the past. It may not be during COVID that has to be done, but if it does, they certainly can have my assessment as either a template or just an add-on if they so chose.
Okay, Councilor Terry.
I thank Lisa and Austin for their input. I think, just to simplify, I think my suggestion would be to move 1, 2, and 5 for these 2 special elections back to the middle school, have 4 remain at Golden Drive, and have 3 and 6 move to the senior center. That is the way it was, not too long ago. So I think, to Lisa's point with the assessment, I think it's been proven to be adequate. It has handicap accessibility. I've wanted to do this for a while, and I know one of the concerns we had was air quality at the gymnasium, but that seems to have been addressed. It is going to be a relatively light turnout, nothing like the presidential election. So that's what I would recommend. But and I do think it's something that we need to make sure we put on the agenda. And I don't know where we've discussed it now, if that would give a council the opportunity to put it off, because I really think we need to vote on it at the first meeting in February, I think the 2nd.
Yeah, and a motion or the wording for a motion came through from Copeland and Page about 5:30, 5:45.
Yeah.
With the wording that would be needed to change that motion. So I am going to send this to Rules and Ordinance Committee to come back with the motion to change those polling places, putting 3 and 6 at the senior center, and 1, 2, and 5 at the gymnasium. And unless they can find a better place when they have their meeting. But I think it's pretty important that we get this done. It's got to be passed on that first meeting in February, so that we can give the proper notices and sign the warrants. We'll probably do that all on that same day. Councilor Ruggiero.
Just a question for either the town manager and or the superintendent. Is there any precedent for this statewide? I have a feeling if there is, it's very minimal, but seems like an interesting situation we're in.
Yeah, I mean, from a school department's standpoint, I'm not sure. I would assume that any superintendent that's been working for the last 10 months, anything that's going to throw you off course in terms of student learning and certainly teaching, you know, in a hybrid model, which we've been doing just for a short period of time. Any disruption in that is quantified by about 10,000 because parents are, you know, on edge to begin with, and we're just getting back. And
sure.
So, and I don't know how many schools, you know, there are many schools, I guess, where elections happen in the schools. I have had conversation with other superintendents in my group about schools being open during elections, and how, you know, how disturbing that would be at this time frame just for us in terms of our own mental health and worrying about kids on a good day, you know, with heightened anxieties around everything else, you know, that wouldn't be recommended.
Thank you, Lisa. And I don't think there's any other towns that are having special
Council President?
right now. So, Councilor Jura, I don't think there's any precedent.
Yeah, well, November would have been the last right opportunity,
and they probably weren't in school.
Everybody was home, right?
Yeah. All right, Councilor Flockhart, go ahead.
I completely agree with Councilor Lettieri that we should follow what Lisa is suggesting. But my question is to Town Manager Faison. Did I understand you to say there would not be early voting and vote by mail on this election, given the fact that we're still in COVID?
From what I've been informed from the assistant town clerk, there will be vote by mail, absentee, but the kind of week of early voting at a polling location, I don't think that was going to be feasible again. So I think that the mail-in voting will be available. So I misspoke on that. Sorry about that.
Is that absentee voting or vote by mail?
I would have to confer with Joanne D'Amato, and I would welcome her to join. I think she was on this call. She was on this earlier, but I'm not sure if she's still on. That said, I can provide this information if necessary, or at a follow-up.
Thank you.
Was Joanne on?
See her name in the audience. I will switch her over.
Yep, she's on.
Joanne, are you on? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi there.
How you doing?
Good, thanks. We will have absentee as usual in mail-in voting. We won't have the early voting as Austin said, but the mail-in voting is the order that the legislation has passed was good until March 31st. So this election still qualifies for the mail-in voting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You want to tell people how they get those ballots?
Well, you can always call the office. We can mail you out an application, or we will have it on the town website. They can download it, or they can go to mass.gov and they can download an application there.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Thank you for coming.
No problem.
Councilor Giro.
Just one quick question as a follow-up in regards to the early voting or lack thereof. Is this consistent with the other municipality and the polling locations there for this election? Or are Winthrop voters not, put it differently, are Winthrop voters not going to be able to vote early, but Revere voters will be able to vote early in person?
That is a good question. I don't
know that yet, Joanne.
I can reach out to.
No, the Secretary of State's office said they won't. We don't this election doesn't qualify for early voting.
The entire election.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Joanne? Hearing none, I want to thank you, Joanne, for coming on and being here.
You're welcome.
All right. Moving on, as I said, we're sending that to Council Vice President Christopher's Rules and Ordinance Committee to come back. Just now, we are now opening up again for public comment. And I see one hand up, and that's Wendy Millar Page.
Wendy Millar's fine. We all know who I am. Hi, everybody. It's nice
Hey,
to
Wendy, how you doing?
Council Vice President Christopher, Councilor Giro, and Councilor Honan. I know it's not easy to come out with things when we're in the middle of discourse and people aren't settled on stuff, but it's brave of you to speak up, because sometimes we forget as Winthrop, we're very insulated. You remember how connected we are and how the things that happened outside of our island do affect us all. And so I appreciate you taking that time to put that together and putting it forward tonight. Additionally, I wanted you all just to know from my perspective in dealing with Comcast Business, I was speaking with them about the inequity as to people being home and talking to them about the usage and then the $10 increments up to $100 if you go over a certain number of usage per household. They were saying that they're finding it one way to recoup some of the loss from not having so many businesses being open. So that's an interesting factor. Just wanted to share that information. Also, in a conversation that I was having with some of the towns a little further on the North Shore, they're looking to regionalize some of their solid waste. So in other words, for something like us, is it possible for us to, let's talk to Revere, let's talk to some of our other communities and see if we can look at regionalizing some of our recycling and our solid waste. Just a recommendation. Thank you, Rob, for putting forth that thing for the Zoom. I really think that the level of participation consistently has increased, except for when we go for a 3-hour meeting. That was a joke. And additionally, the zoning for the middle school, especially for the folks who are neighbors to this area, when the zoning starts to go through, I'd really like to make a recommendation that you overkill the publicity so that no one can say that they missed an opportunity to have a voice, because I would hate to see for this to be delayed any further in any other direction. And I mean, every social media, every email, tag it, at the bottom of WCAT scrolling on the screen if it's the week before. I just really think that we need to make sure that this can start to move forward and not sit there any longer. And thank you all. I wanted to thank Town Manager Faison for the opportunity to serve on the WIN 2030 commission that we were working together. It's fantastic. And I'm hoping that as we move forward, we will look at a master plan, especially where we're going to have someone who's going to be doing some planning. A master plan process is a little long, but it really does benefit. I've worked on one in another city, and it gives you solid ways to look at things and move forward. And I would hope that would be something that the council would consider. And with that, hopefully I'm the last person to talk and y'all can go home. Thank you.
We are home.
Well, yeah, we all are. Anyone else in public comment? Public comment? One last call for public comment. Hearing none, we will move on. And talk about public relations. I just want to point out that with this special election, the last day to register for the primary vote is February 10th. That election of primary will be held on March 2nd. We will let you know where at the next meeting. And the regular election, the last day to register to vote for the regular state election will be March 10th. And the final election with all these candidates running to replace Bob DeLeo will be held on March 30th. All right, I'm just going to ask everyone to please be safe. I had even said it at the beginning of the meeting, but I'll say it at the end. Wear your mask, social distance, follow the governor's orders, no more than 10 people indoors, no more than 25 people together outdoors. Please follow those orders and let's knock this down. I mean, it's crazy that we're back in the red and we're back in the red for so long. And to have 200 people already this month is just atrocious. So please be safe. Get tested if you feel like you have any symptoms, and even if you feel like you don't. The center is open. That testing center is open all the time. So get tested and don't spread it. Okay? We have openings on numerous committees. Please come and get involved with the town. We need you. We have openings on the Airport Hazards Committee, the Planning Board. I have one opening on the Diversity Committee. So I'm looking for someone for that committee. Please go online, get an application and fill them in. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All right, all those in favor of adjourning, please answer yes when your name is called.
Council Ruggiero,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Councilor Terry,
Yes.
Councilor Honan,
Yes.
Councilor Conti,
Yes.
Council Farino,
Yes.
Vice President Christopher,
Yes.
President Boncory.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carried, we are adjourned. Please be safe.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Guys, good meeting.